Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we have got a great guest today, and we have Tysha Scott on, and she is a great person, Heidi, because we love the theater, and I don't think people think about the theater as being a way of healing after loss. You know, we had Bessel van der Kolk on the show, remember, Heidi?
Yes.
And Bessel, who wrote The Body Keeps Score, actually talked on the show, on our television show, about how his son was deeply depressed and he went into the theater as a kid, and it changed his whole retrospective. So let's talk about healing in the theater today.
Okay, Mom, I'd love to. And Tysha's been on our cable shows before. So if you Google Open to Hope and her name, Tysha Scott, you will see the cable show she did, and she was a phenomenal guest. We're going to be talking about how theater heals after loss. We're going to be talking about Tysha's own journey because, Mom, she also had a spouse die in 2020, and he happened to have the same name as your spouse, Philip. Tysha was married to the love of her life, Philip Randall Scott, who was a successful attorney. They were married for 30 years until his sudden death in June of 2020. And they have two beautiful children together. Tysha Scott is the owner and management consultant of TS Management Consulting. She was a child performer and attended the famous Fame High School of Performing Arts in New York City. And that's just 2 blocks from my house, and it's an amazing school. For 15 years, Tysha has been a theater teacher and theater teaching artist for middle school, high school, and college. Welcome to our podcast, Tysha.
Thank you so much. I am incredibly happy to be here. First and foremost, thank you for having me on the show.
Before we launch into I can do this and I'm healing and I'm on that path, tell us a little bit about Philip and what happened.
Yes. Phil Scott was quite an intrepid leader in his life, in his career. He was a mentor in his career. In fact, his job, he worked for National Grid. He was the first executive, a man of color, to be elevated to become an executive. And in that life of his career, he hired the most women at the company in terms of the legal department, mentored many people of all nationalities, and became that person that everyone wanted to go to for training. At home, he also was an intrepid leader. He was an incredible husband, an amazing father. In fact, National Grid has an internship in his honor called the Philip Randall Scott Internship Program, where they pull students from his law school to become Philip Randall Scott scholars and interns. We have 2 beautiful children. One just graduated from Wake Forest University in May, who had to enter college 5 weeks after her father passed away. Our marriage was a love story. Phil's life was a love story. My life with him was a love story. We met in college. What I eventually got to was that I had to allow my life to be a love story because of the love story with Philip Randall Scott.
What is it that the arts do for people?
I think that this is so important because the death of your spouse, whether they pass away from a long illness or sudden, in my case, suddenly right in front of me in the middle of a conversation, that it is traumatic, and it becomes a play almost in your head. I literally stepped out of my body and said, this absolutely cannot be happening to me. I felt like I was a character in a play. I thought I was an actress in a movie. The Body Keeps the Score, I also read twice because I got something different from it in the very beginning of my loss. And at the end, Phil died 7 days after our daughter graduated from high school in a pandemic, June 13, 2020. 7 days later, in the middle of a conversation with him, he died. He passed out and said he felt dizzy. And of course, you get so much advice regarding therapy and what to do and who to talk to and journal, do this. And it comes at you like lightning, right? With this overwhelming sense of grief. And the first thing I said to myself is, what am I going to do with all this love? Where do I place and put all of this love? This was this grief that had nowhere to go. I wrote, I sought counseling, and I had to get my daughter 4 weeks later to college. And I had to pay the mortgage, right? We had to keep living. And I recognized one day I just got up and I said, let me go to a play. Let me just go to a play. A friend of mine called and said, just get out and get some fresh air. I said, I'm not in the mood to watch a play. She said, trust me, let's just go. From the moment the quote unquote curtains open, and I use that in the sense of opening up for me when the first lines came out of the actors' mouths, I began to cry because I instantly knew I had 2 hours to be out of body, 2 hours to not think of anything, 2 hours just to see actors on stage, 2 hours to see a show that was, whether it was based on a true story or not, I didn't have to think. I could dig into those characters. It happened to be a pretty deep play about a young man trying to figure out whether he was going to tell his parents if he was gay. And the intensity of watching that, recognizing I'm so not alone in trauma and in grief and loss. And somehow that show, I said to myself, this was 6 months later, I have got to institute some form of creativity in my life. Where do I go to? What I have always been comfortable with. So I started reading plays and I started going to plays. Now, what reading plays did for me, it also took me out of my world for the moment. And when you are grieving, what do you have to lose? You've already lost something so important to you. What do you have to lose to read a play? What do you have to lose to go see a play? It could be a community play. It could be on Broadway. It could be off Broadway. It allows you to feel moved in a different way, to experience another life, and to look at that and say, I'm happy for 2 moments. I am solid for 2 moments. I'm not thinking of my grief for 2 hours. Why do we go to the theater? We go to the theater to be moved, to experience another life, to have a discussion about what this means. What does this play mean? You can walk away not liking the play, but you can discuss that you didn't like the play and that you sat there for 2 hours and you watched something and you have a whole immersive discussion about it. So it moved me into a direction of, I can do this. I know I can heal myself. I know I can find healing. It will never be the same, but I will throw myself into this new world.
I love this. Now, that is our beginning. It feels to me like that's kind of the passive part in a way, but
Right.
it's active to go to the theater. But then you take it and you then get involved.
Well, let me backtrack to 2019, to February 2019, a year and a half before Phil died. He came to me when we were just sort of in the Saturday mode, right, of household. We had a senior in college and she had activities and, what college is she applying to? And he came to me and he said, I need to talk to you. And I says, oh my, that sounds pretty intense. And he says, no, let's just have a conversation. He said, do me a favor. He said, promise me when Morgan graduates from high school that you will dig deeper into teaching theater and directing high school and college level. And I said, well, hence the fact that we'll have a daughter in college. I said, it's pretty expensive. Teaching theater doesn't pay as well as my consulting work. I said, but I love it. He said, nope. He said, I absolutely love the way your eyes light up and shine when I see you engaged in theater. When I see you teaching students, whether they're college, whether they're high school. He says, when I see you engulfed, engaged in this work, your eyes light up. He says, and your eyes shine. And when I met you, you were my performing arts bride. 7 months after his death, I received a call from Classic Stage Company, which is the theater that I'm on the board for. And I received another call from a theater company that wanted me to teach classes, and then another theater company that wanted me to teach classes. And they're all sort of coming to me in 2 weeks, 7 months after he died. And Classic Stage Company said, we are so excited about the work that you've done with us for years. We're so sorry about your loss. And for years, you've been bringing audiences and groups to us to see our shows, and you've been a big supporter of ours. We've wanted to ask you this before the pandemic, but we would like you to join the board because we really need you. And we suspect that you need us as well. And it says that could be creative. It could be, because when you join the board, you have to be a part of many different committees, so many, different committees. And then I said yes to the teaching opportunities. What that did, it gave me a purpose in creativity, which I knew was part of my grief healing. In addition to reading and journaling and seeking help and therapy where needed. But I began to dig into what came natural to me, and what I always loved was theater. And I want to just say this, okay. It doesn't, for some people, find that creative niche. If it's not theater, take a sculpture class. The best theater class to take when you are interested in just healing, improvisation.
We had somebody at Compassionate Friends that came in and gave an improv class. And, Compassionate Friends is for people that have lost children and siblings. And people loved it. They said, this is an amazing place. I've never been to an improv class, so I don't know that much about it, but.
I would highly encourage anyone who's going through a deep and profound loss to take an improvisation class. Because what does the word even improv means, right? It means acting something out that is not sort of in your normal spectrum. You're stepping out of yourself. You're finding things out about yourself. You're moving your body. And what do we need to do in grief? We need to stay healthy. We need to be active as much as we can. You move your body. It is fun. You don't have to think too much. You don't have to worry about being nervous about reading scenes and lines. It became so much fun for me to teach improvisational classes and to take classes. You are never too old for theater.
So Tysha, if somebody came to you and they were grieving and you were teaching improv, what would be the first assignment you would give them in the class? What would you have them do?
I had a student, thank you for asking that. I had a student that had just lost their grandparent, who she was very close to. And she said, I feel like I don't want to take class today, but I feel like I need it. I says, well, the first exercise I'd like you to do after your deep breathing is to pretend that you are traveling to another country, to your favorite country that you'd like to take your grandmother to. And I want you to act out 3 places where you would take her. I says, but you're not allowed to use English. I want you to use, and this is sort of what I teach in the course called Theater for Life Development. I want you to use another, not even another language. I want you to sort of create a language so that the audience, who is your classmates who are watching this, can say, oh, she's in another country. She's taking her grandmother or taking someone on the trip. And what she was able to do with that, with her body and with, it allowed her to say, Grandma, this is where I would have wanted to take you. This is how I love you. This is how much I love you.
I think our biggest fear is that you'll get in there and somebody will say, oh, act this out of having your son die, or, and it's not that direct punch in the gut. It's, with somebody who knows what they're doing. It's a broad.
And there are a lot of tears involved with that, right? There are a lot of, but the beauty of it is you are creating a safe, theater creates a safe space for emotion. Many people will say that theater was even more helpful or just as helpful as their therapy. Because it allows, there are no, of course, the rules in theaters that we respect, in theater classes, that we respect everyone's work. We don't boo, we are supportive, but it is a safe space to cry, to laugh, to scream. So much emotion will come out of a monologue or a scene that someone will do that they didn't even know was coming. You can't buy that type of therapy. right?
And I like the laughter part, because sometimes after a death, we feel guilty about laughing. We feel like it's not okay to laugh. So you're giving people permission to laugh because they're acting out various scenes.
Right. And oftentimes I will assign a comedic scene for people who have had loss. It says, we're going to do a comedy. We're going to take a monologue,
like this.
here, a 2 to 3 minute monologue, depending on the person and you knowing what they can handle. There's a lot of therapy involved, which I recognize as the older I get. There's a lot of therapy involved teaching theater, because you also have to know what someone can handle. And I knew this young lady had so much fun with her grandmother that she would be able to open up and feel great about taking her grandmother, acting out scenes, taking her grandmother on trips. And she loved to travel. She said, when I go to college, I'm studying abroad for 2 years. I mean, I knew she loved to travel. Theater allows you the space and the time to be free.
Ooh, I love that.
I like that.
On that note, how would you suggest that I find some improv in my local area?
If you Google improv classes, it will come up with a ton of classes.
And the thing I wanted to say, Tysha, about this is you don't have to be an actor or even know how to act
Nope,
to do improv.
absolutely.
Anybody can do improv.
That is the beauty of improv. It's for everyone. Theater is for everyone. Theater is the one space that's open. All are welcome. Theater is great to watch it, to read some plays, to watch it, take an improv class, and take a comedy class.
So Tysha, what advice would you give someone that's just had a spouse die?
This is not the end of your journey. Scars only show us where we've been. They do not determine or dictate where we are going. And that the scars that we carry are really just part of our lives. You know, you think you have years with someone and then something happens. Your life turns into, where am I going and who I am? Run towards the light, and that the trauma is part of me, but it's not all of me. There is going to be light, some light in your life. It could be a person, it could be a sculpture class. There's going to be some light in your life when your spouse dies. Run toward that light. I'm going to leave you with a theater song that talks about what I did for love. There's a song called, it's from the famous Broadway, called a chorus line, "What I Did for Love." And it says, what I did for love, I don't regret. But now I'm moving forward and I'm moving on. But I don't regret any time, because we do feel guilty when our spouse dies. I should have done more. How did I not take care of him? How did I not see this? But your spouse would want you to run toward the light and use your life, use the trauma, because it's always going to be a part of you, but it is not all of you, and it does not dictate where you're going.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell us how people about your theater company and anything you'd like to promote on the show.
Absolutely. My program is called Theater for Life Development, utilizing theater skills in your everyday life and how theater skills can enhance you at work, as a student, taking exams, in your communication skills, in your speaking skills. So it's called Theater for Life Development. And my email is tysha.scottconsulting@gmail.com. And my website, which is being totally restructured, is theaterforlifedevelopment.com.
Oh.
And I will send you a note when it's up and running next week again, because I've added to it, as you can imagine.
Well, it's so fabulous to see you even on Zoom, and we're looking forward to seeing you in person one of these days again.
Absolutely.
Have a fabulous time in London at the theater.
Yes, thank you so much. And remember, theater heals in all fashions and formats.
Yep.
Tysha, I love this. Thank you so much. You and my mom are great examples of how you are shining and living in the light. And my mom's Phil and your Phil are up there cheering you on as you enter the next chapter. Thank you so much for being out there. And you're both beacons of examples that there is hope after loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
Heidi and I want to thank you all for connecting with our show today. And we always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.